Our opening words are called Like Pendulums We Swing by Dawn Von Forster. Like pendulums we swing from hunger to hunger, from hunger for the one great truth, absolute, eternal, mystical, to hunger for simple, near-in, familiar truths that change as we change, grow as we grow. Like pendulums, we swing from hunger for cosmic imperatives, commanding us to expand ourselves, to hunger for immediate and authentic inner promptings urging us to be ourselves. We would be right with heaven, so we swing outward. We would fulfill our own heart, so we swing inward. We would grasp the holy, and we would create ourselves. We have this dual hunger to serve the cosmos that commands us to be more than we would and to be our genuine selves, content with what we are. So we ride this pendulum in hunger for life. We ride from truth that calls us out to truths that call us in. And all because the gravity of life pulls across our hunger, never allowing us to stay on one side or the other, always moving us into new urgency for the wholeness that would bind both the cosmic and the personal. And so, life pulls us and we swing from truth to truths, from cosmos to self, from mystery to clarity, from out to in. It is our state to swing and to be drawn ever into another swing. This is the motion that makes ours a human life. May the great gravity of life which pulls us along an unknown, holy axis never let the pendulums we are cease swinging until the truth we seek and the truths we are become one. And next, I should make an announcement about we are lacking orders of service today, but we'll kind of follow along and keep the momentum going. The next item on our order of service is Bill Bradshaw, who will grace us not only with a talk today, but with his mandolin playing.
So in keeping with the theme this month and this morning of harmony, if all goes well over the next minute or two, you might actually hear some harmony notes. We'll see. There might be some accidentals as well.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
While Bill gets his bandolin put away, we'll move to the chalice lighting, and this is a simulated. Well, it's not even simulated. It's a cerebral chalice
Let's
lighting.
hold off for a second.
Oh, okay. We'll let the truck go by.
I had a feeling this might happen. I was surprised that it didn't happen last time. We could light a lot of chalices with that much fuel.
That's right. That's right. And how nice that we have an opportunity to be in harmony with our neighbor who has a need to make a little noise as he drives his truck up there. And so we will harmoniously pause before we, in our mind's eye, do a chalice lighting.
I think he
Yes,
is.
I think he is.
I think this is the neighbor that plows us.
He
plows the snow in the winter. Yeah.
He plows out our parking lot and does it before we arrive on snowy Sunday mornings. So we have nothing but goodwill and harmonious intentions toward him. But here comes another one, or did he turn around?
He's bringing his rig around.
Oh.
Don't worry, I'll edit this out in the YouTube version. Maybe I'll leave it in.
Well, it's part of the interdependent web, isn't it?
I suppose.
I believe the eagle is landing right now.
Yeah. Maybe we can go ahead.
All right. Victor and I have a new word that we use, which is he's buffering now. We don't know for sure what he's doing. He's just kind of buffering. Okay. Chalice lighting words. We come together every week, bound not by a creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods, yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, who we are together, matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world. So as we've lit the chalice and gathered in our mind together around this flame, we can do candle lighting. If anyone has a joy or concern, you can come share your joy or concern.
And feel free to unmute yourself and share from home as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a concern for our friends to the south involved with the Mullen fire in the Medicine Bow area and to the south. We're thinking of all those firefighters, residents, and everyone affected.
I'd like to say our joy is that the fire divided and didn't burn down our honeymoon Spruce Mountain lookout.
This is a joy. Before I retired, people would ask me what I was going to do. And one of the things was, I'm going to paint my house. I'm finally going to paint my house, right? Well, it wasn't really a lie. My intentions were really good, but I finally faced reality. And this summer, we hired some contractors, and they're almost finished with our house. The end is in sight. And today, Michelle and I will finish painting our garage. Everything will be painted. It truly is a joy. And I'm not going to lose sleep over the house anymore.
I have a joy for the burning sun, but I'm also going to move the camera if I need to, so it doesn't have the burning sun in the lens. So thanks for bearing with me, everyone. Okay.
It is indeed a joy to be here together. So I light a candle for that. It's not something that we count on as the season turns. So I light a candle for this opportunity and for this beautiful day. And I also light a candle or think about it for all the joys and concerns unspoken, kept in our hearts. And now Victor will read a story for all ages with a prop.
Do you want me to hold your prop?
Yeah, you could hold it for now. Thanks. And Sonia, can you come up? Yeah, thanks for doing that. And if Naomi, if you're out there, I hope you're listening too, and any other kids and kids of all ages. So Sonia, I wanted to ask you, when you think of harmony, what do you think of? About peace? And people helping each other. Okay. I think that's going to figure in a little bit in the story. So see what you can hear about harmony or disharmony in this story. And it's called The Perfect Globe. And we have a prop here we have a globe. In a museum many years ago, there was an amazing exhibit. It was a tiny globe, just a few feet in diameter, yet it held so much mystery and so much beauty within it that people traveled for miles and miles just to see it. There was always a crowd around it, and queues lined up, patiently waiting for their turn to view the wonder. And there was a delicate sphere floating in its case. It looked different from every angle. You could see big pools of water in it. Sonia, what do you suppose the big pools of water might be? Yeah, and smaller flows of water feeding into the big pools. Sometimes the pools were smooth and blue, and at other times they were white with froth and full of movement. There were lumps on the globe, some big bumps with white tops and some smaller, gentler bumps. Sonia, what do you suppose the bumps are? Yep. You could have run your fingers over the bumps, feeling the sharp spikes on some of them and the velvety textures of others. The globe had little sand pits in it, with lovely patterns blown by the wind, which changed every day, and had frosty places too, which burned your fingers with the cold if you touched them. And what do you suppose those were? Say again, the what kind of places? Okay, the Antarctic, maybe the snowy places, yeah. Okay. Maybe some sandy places too. And it danced in the space around it, turning on its toes. So every part of it got a turn at facing the light and resting in the darkness. People marveled at the thin layer of gas that surrounded this little globe and noticed that there were holes in it and that these holes seemed to be getting bigger. Anybody know what the big holes might be? The ozone, yeah. They were concerned in case something was going wrong with it. And sometimes parts of it would grow dark for no apparent reason, and there might be smoke and a strange smell coming from those parts. And the people didn't know why. And they were concerned because the dark bits never quite seemed to get better afterwards. Perhaps most of all, though, people gasped in wonder at the tiny creatures that lived on the globe. Some lived in the pools, and some lived just under the gas wrapping, and others lived on the bumps. The globe was declared a national treasure, and people paid large sums of money to make sure it was protected. It had become so precious to them that they would have defended it with their own lives. They would never let anyone hurt it. It came to be known as the greatest wonder of all time, and people flocked to see it, to touch it, and to love it. They felt that just to be in touch with it would bring them healing, just to gaze at it deeply would bring them wisdom. They felt that without it, their own lives would be meaningless. That was all a long time ago. The treasure has fallen into disrepair now. Some say that the rot set in when the people who used to treasure the globe started to shrivel and shrink because they were so wrapped up in less important matters. The people eventually got so small that they disappeared right inside the globe, and after that, they never noticed it again, and they completely forgot how they had once treasured and loved it. With no one to cherish it, the globe slowly stopped breathing, and eventually it slipped away into space, unregarded. So my question to you, Sonia, is do you think that story says anything to us about harmony? I didn't quite hear every word that Sonia was saying, but I think I got some of it. I think she was saying when you treasure something, you take care of it. And sometimes if you can think about one thing and you can forget about other things. And if you do that, and now I'm adding my own words to what Sonia was saying, that might cause disharmony. So harmony means kind of keeping everything in balance, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you for your input, Sonia, and thanks to everybody for listening. And now we will have Michelle, who will give us a moment of meditation.
I invite you into a space of quiet and peace to ground yourself by noticing your contact with chair and earth, by sitting straight, by becoming aware of your breathing. Look at your hands. They've been through a lot, those hands. They have strengths, scars, beauty, I invite you to remember that it is your hands that do the work of love in this world. These hands may hold another's hands. These hands may type emails to politicians, sign cards of consolation and congratulation. These hands may patiently teach, quilt works of beauty, or write words urging peace. These hands may bathe children, feed elders, nurse the ill, work the earth, organize communities. These hands clasp in prayer, open in release, grasp in solidarity, clench in righteous anger. These hands are God's hands, your hands, our hands, a great mystery of flesh and intention, a great potential of embodied love.
Sorry, Bill, 1 second. The planet keeps moving.
I hear speaking noises.
The planet keeps moving. There we go.
I think I've completely forgotten how to approach a presentation without going to Google first, right? Just, I'm not the only one that does that. So I did that because Janet asked me if I would give a presentation, and the subject this month is harmony. And the second word that popped into my head after the word harmony was peace. Peace and harmony just seem to be like bread and butter. They go together. So I went to Google to see if I could kind of sort out what's the difference between peace and harmony. And as far as I can tell, not so much, really. We're talking about peace at the same time we're talking about harmony. Peace is defined as a state of tranquility, quiet, and harmony, absence of violence. For instance, a state free from civil disturbance, a state free of oppressive and unpleasant thoughts and emotions, peace. Harmony in personal relations is a definition of peace. And if you look at a definition, at least one, of harmony, it's agreement or accord. And then there are several in this version of the harmony definition that relate to musical harmony, voices raised in harmony, musical instruments where somebody's playing the root and other instruments are playing the third and the fifth, harmonious notes within a scale. And that stuff is just beautiful when the voices and the instruments are really in harmony. If somebody's out a little bit, not so much. It's where the dissonance comes in that Victor mentioned, if people aren't in harmonious agreement. And it occurred to me that musical harmony, and I think Bruce alluded to this last week, musical harmony is a pretty nice metaphor for life, right? You can come up with all sorts of ways to use musical harmony, voices in unison, and musical instruments as a metaphor for the life we want to live. I think it's almost as fertile as tending the garden as a metaphor for life. Anyway, I'm not going there at all. Just, I guess, kind of an introduction to what I was thinking about a little bit. This morning, I'm going to read a presentation that was penned by Frank Church back in 1998. And I don't think the word harmony shows up in this presentation that he wrote, this sermon that he wrote at all, but I think it gets to the idea without explicitly saying harmony. A little bit about Frank Church. He was born in 1948, but he passed away in 2009. He was a leading Unitarian Universalist minister, an author, and a theologian. He was a senior minister of the Unitarian Church of All Souls in New York City till 2006, and then he was appointed as Minister of Public Theology. He was born in Palo Alto, California, while his father, Frank Church, was a student at Stanford Law School. In 1950, the family returned to Boise, Idaho, and his father was elected to the United States Senate in 1956 and served 4 terms until January 1981. And I went to a fisheries meeting years ago and had the pleasure of hearing Frank Church give an address to this group of fisheries scientists. Frank Church, Jr., was a graduate of Stanford University and Harvard Divinity School, and he received his PhD in early church history from Harvard University in 1978. He passed away from cancer in 2009, but before he did, he told his congregation that he wanted to sum up his thoughts on the topics that have been pervasive in his life's work. And he did that in a final book entitled Love and Death, for those that might be interested in reading Frank Church's summation of his life's work. For the Beauty of the Earth, written by Frank Church. Perhaps the best thing about being a Unitarian Universalist is that when we learn new things, we are encouraged to update our point of view. By definition, ours is a non-doctrinal faith. In fact, the term doctrinaire liberal is an oxymoron. In religion anyway, one cannot be dogmatic and liberal at the same time. If orthodoxy, which means literally right teaching, promulgates a single authorized set of answers, we celebrate instead the open mind. We trust our own thoughts and experiences as potentially as illuminating as the thoughts and experiences of those who came before us. Not that our answers will be therefore superior. We simply hold that no single book, no revelation, ancient or modern, contains the whole truth. Since for us, revelation is not sealed, Unitarian Universalists are free to range broadly and search for answers to age-old questions. Religious liberalism does not require fidelity to the latest fashion, only to remaining open to new sources of inspiration. A few years ago, my then associate minister, now president of our denomination, John Burens, and I wrote an introduction to Unitarianism based on the 5 sources of our faith as listed on the back of your Sunday bulletin. As it says there, from our denomination's covenant of purposes and principles, the living tradition we share draws from many sources. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic women and men which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. And humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. I think all of those will probably sound at least vaguely familiar to everybody here. We've talked about many of these things over the years. Well, this June, Beacon Press is publishing a revised edition with 2 new chapters and a preface by Robert Fulghum. With spring, at least actuarially, right around the corner, this morning I shall share with you some of my thoughts concerning the new 6th source of our faith, the teachings of earth-centered religious traditions, which remind us that the creation itself manifests the sacred and should therefore be tended gently and revered. Though it elicited considerable debate before being added to our purposes and principles by the General Assembly in 1995, this 6th source holds a long-established place in our theological tradition. The most revered 19th century Unitarians, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, and Henry David Thoreau, wouldn't have blinked at this addition to our covenant. Transcendentalists were liberal in both their openness to new ways of thinking and their respect for those who had broken past codes, melding old insights into their venture to formulate new ones. In addition, nature shaped their theological vision, drawing them out of narrow academic chambers to contemplate a broader text for contemplation. A respect for the interdependent web of being of which we are all a part may best describe what Emerson, Fuller, and Thoreau held most sacred. Even as the Bible celebrates, quote, the earth and the fullness thereof, unquote, for their own experience of the holy, our transcendentalist forebears looked first to the creation. Recently, my family and I took a whitewater rafting trip down the middle fork of the Salmon River. The river runs 100 miles, is entirely contained within the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness Area. Named after my father, this 2.2 million acre preserve is the largest wilderness area in the continental United States. Having long considered being born in Idaho an accident, I'm uncomfortable around guns and horses, I was surprised by the power of this homecoming. I looked through my father's eyes and discovered the beauty of things he worked to save. Our wild and scenic rivers, our precious wilderness. What saved me is that the mountains, rapids, and heavens made me smaller, so small that I began to notice things far bigger than my own little concerns. I was a part of, not apart from, the ground of our being. Its power was real, my own derivative and unimportant. In the ultimate sense, books didn't matter. Churches didn't matter. I heard the cosmos sing and watched nature dance. This was religion. On my father's tombstone in Boise, we placed the following words from one of his speeches, quote, "I never knew a person who felt self-important in the morning after spending the night in the open on an Idaho mountainside under a star-studded summer sky," unquote. A lapsed Catholic and secular humanist, my father may have been unchurched, but he was not unacquainted with the one thing churches hope to offer, the chance to walk on holy ground. In his case, Native Americans had walked the ground dedicated in his name long before him. Their paintings decorate, even illuminate the walls of caves. Their gods were present there, then, and now. Anyone looking for the Holy Land might best begin with the earth that sustains us. The earth as touchstone of the sacred, indeed as holy ground, comes before Judaism and Christianity, before the other world religions, before all the philosophers of humanism. One sure proof of authentic religious experience is a combination of humility and awe. Our encounter with nature inspires both. Though earth-centered traditions run the gamut from simple to complex, from tribal to universal, each taps a power that no book or creed can begin to approximate, the power of the creation. This is true even of the simplest faith. Man, woman, fire, food, sun, rain, star. Early animals felt the earth and all its powers, thunder, lightning, floods, volcanoes, felt it to be alive, even divine. Their awe ran the gamut from awesome to awful, from wondrous to terrifying. We may fairly describe our ancient ancestors' worship and fear of nature's gods as primitive religion. You would think that an Enlightenment tradition would celebrate having graduated from so-called superstition and never look back. For many years we did. Yet in recent years, many liberal religionists are beginning to discover that with each gain we score in concert with scientific demystifiers, we must protect ourselves from losing something even more important, an intimate experience of the power and mystery of the creation. One need not accept the tenets of ancient animism to perceive heaven in a mustard seed or a world in a grain of sand. To do so is not to reject rationalism or even skepticism, which guards us from irrational delusion. Thoughtful people can maintain an eye both critical and open. Turning for inspiration to earth-centered spirituality is not to abandon our critical faculties, but to open them wider, to place ourselves in a larger field, and that field under the widest canopy of stars we can imagine. Then, like the first human, for a sacred moment, we too may be terrified and filled with awe. We too may experience raw religion. Past president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, William Schultz, speaks less often of God than of the holy. This is not merely inclusive rhetoric. Answering a question asked hundreds of years ago by St. Lawrence, quote, "Whom should I adore, the creator or the creation?" Unquote. Schultz writes, again, quote, "Most Western religions have answered back, adore the creator, and supplied an image, Zeus, Jehovah, Christ, to be adored. But our answer is far different. Whom should we adore? The creation, surely, for whatever there be of the creator will be made manifest in her handiwork." Developing this insight, one distinction between Unitarian Universalism and the major book-driven Western religions is that we tend to view the world as a school rather than as a corrections facility. Rather than punishing us as sinners, by incarcerating us here, sentencing us to life, and then at death, offering release only to those who have followed a strict set of guidelines for rehabilitation. Our faith celebrates the creation not only as a beloved home, but also as a sacred text from which we may draw wisdom. Earth-centered traditions, therefore, a natural source for Unitarian Universalism. We may claim no inside knowledge of the Creator, but are quick to affirm, learn from, and protect the creation. The gods and goddesses, or if you prefer, the most precious and profound, are accessible to us in the taste of honey and the touch of stone. Bill Schultz writes, "This is why we love the earth, honor the human body, and bless the stars. Religion is not just a matter of things unseen. For us, the holy is not hidden, but shows its face in the blush of the world's exuberance." Such a worldview has ethical consequences as well. It's no surprise that earth-centered traditions place a high value on protecting the environment, on saving the earth. The same commitment is manifest in biblical text also, especially the prophets, whose words have inspired generations of Unitarian Universalists to work for peace, justice, and on behalf of the environment. As the prophet Isaiah warned 25 centuries ago, the earth dries up and withers. The world languishes and withers. The heavens languish together with the earth. The earth lies polluted under its inhabitants. They have transgressed laws, violated the statutes, broken the everlasting covenant. If the letter here differs from that of the earth-centered traditions, the spirit is the same. Again, common values transcend contrasting beliefs. Different sources flow into the same river, which flows into the one cosmic sea. This is the very essence of universalism, where all that live are related to the one source, itself the wellspring of salvation. Among the little band of vacationers who traveled with my family down the middle fork of the Salmon River was an astronomer. On our last night together, he gave us a guided tour of the heavens. After pointing out the landmarks, Arcturus, Mars, the Big Dipper, he reminded us that all we can see with the naked eye, it seemed like 1,000 stars, is only an infinitesimal part of the universe. Not only are there more than 100 billion stars in our galaxy, there are an estimated 100 billion galaxies. To bring this down to size, if the universe were a vast beach, our sun would be no larger than a grain of sand, and the earth a tiny speck of dust upon it. So there we were, 30 humans on a beach gazing out into infinitude, experiencing both humility and cosmic awe. This experience confirmed my faith. No difference that divides us comes close to all that unites us on this tiny speck of living dust on a single grain of sand on the vast beach of the creation. We are truly kith and kin, brothers and sisters, children of a great and magnificent mystery. Holding hands together with my family and fellow travelers as the earth circled our little star coursing through the heavens, I felt two things more profoundly perhaps than ever before. We are one and we are blessed. I think Frank Church writes a good speech.
Give number 21. And wear your mask if you have one, please.
Hymn 21.
Yes.
It'll take me just a second.
minor train wreck.
Okay, I am going to read that chat.
Please join me in blessing the offering this morning. Let this be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is so sacred to many of us. A community of memory and hope, for we are the keepers of the dream. And if you are so inclined, you can make a check out to UUFS. Send that to Ramona Stein, UUFS Treasurer, 1590 Sugarland Drive, number B-206 here in Sheridan. Or you can get on our website and make an online contribution through tithely.com.
And Bill, we can also just drop money into the basket.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We just set it down and
Yeah, I'll put it right
put
here.
money in later if
Just
they
don't
want to.
touch the basket, because I touched it. So don't touch it. Just some closing words. These are spoken, quote unquote, by Casey, who was a preacher in John Steinbeck's novel, The Grapes of Wrath. And the preacher was struggling with his faith, well, apparently out in the wilderness. Nighttime, I'd lay on my back and look up at the stars. Morning, I'd sit and watch the sun come up. Midday, I'd look out from a hill at the rolling dry country. Evening, I'd follow the sun down. Sometimes I'd pray like I'd always done, only I couldn't figure out what I was praying to or for. There was the hills, and there was me, and we wasn't separate no more. We was one thing, and that one thing was holy. I have to go back and reread that book. Well, we have some time for discussion. I would suggest that your comments are more important than my opinion. So with that in mind, I'll open up the floor to whatever people want to talk about.
And please come up to the microphone so that everybody can hear you. Well, Bill, Frank Church is going to be a tough act to follow, so I've definitely got my wheels turning for next week. But I very much appreciated your talk, and I like that very forthright challenge that he puts out there when he says that as Unitarians, we're not afraid to worship the creation, because this is where we are and what we have access to. And I think that's going to be a good starting point for putting my thoughts together. So just thank you for that.
Yeah, I sort of have a policy, like if I'm going to give a presentation during a month, I try to go first. So I can high grade the material, right? Yeah, I don't know what we had a discussion about pantheism. I don't know, was it last month or month before? And there was that saying, every Unitarian Universalist is like a heartbeat away from being a pantheist or something like that. And this sort of resonated with me along those lines.
Sure.
As a sort of an emerging pantheist. Victor?
Yeah, Bill, it's no surprise to me that that was the sermon you wanted to speak to, because it comes out of your own experience of your whole life. Being an environmentalist and working for the game and fish. Yeah, you didn't know you were a pantheist, but you were a pantheist before you knew the name for it, for sure. And I guess just to underscore what Ian was saying, how we as Unitarian Universalists differ from, say, other people who maybe worship a creator and we worship the creation. And I think for us too, that universalist idea that everything is interconnected. So there really isn't a separation between creation and creator. It's all harmony, isn't it? It's all harmony. That's what we worship. So thank you, Bill, for bringing that lovely, lovely sermon to us.
Anyone at home?
Well, both, both this week and last week, I was struck by our seventh principle about the interdependent web of which we were a part. Just by being out here physically, I just feel so blessed that we have this space. I know we had the big truck with the oil tanks, and we've got this lovely tower behind us and trees, but
Just FYI, the Wi-Fi is going back to the building and being beamed from a satellite dish off of that tower into the internet. So
that
it's
is
kind of meta.
incredible. But I've been so aware of the birds singing, the view of the mountains, the open space. And I loved the line in the sermon about no one can wake up feeling important after having spent a night in the Idaho wilderness. Before that, I was thinking of me driving out to the visitor center earlier in the week to try to see if I could see the northern lights. But this would be such a wonderful place to come and observe celestial events. And yeah, I just feel that we're so blessed to have this space here. And thank you, Bill. This was a great sermon.
Yes, I feel like I chose well. So I have to tell you, I love this guy with his truck. He's the guy that shovels the snow, plows the snow for us when it's this deep. He's been a great neighbor. That's his job, so got to accommodate it.
Well, as I don't know what the presentations over the next couple of weeks will be like. I know they'll be interesting and that we'll learn something about each other, about the presenter, and about the topic as well. I look forward to that. But as I've thought a little bit about this topic of harmony, it occurs to me that there, we can think about it in this cosmic way, in this celebrating and worshiping creation, down to much more micro harmonic exchanges or relationships. So I think I think that what I see as the topic being really important for us as we refocus a little bit from the news and think about the things that we still have, in spite of the interruptions in our social life, the things that we still have that sustain us. And Bill, I would request that you read those closing words again. They just really touched me. So I'd like to hear them again. Thank you.
Anybody else? Probably good to finish comments before the closing words again. Well, Bill, I just really appreciated your presentation and especially comments on harmony and tying that to music. And a couple of things occurred to me. If everything is the same note, there's no harmony. That's just one note. The other thing is there's some very incredible music
that incorporates dissonance, which is important to think about. And also there's just, it doesn't take much adjustment to bring dissonance into harmony. You don't have to change everything to do that. Sometimes the adjustments are really small, but I really liked, the presentation was great, and your introductory remarks, I really appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Cal. I was thinking about that idea of dissonance as well. And obviously, I think in a lot of classical music, it's done intentionally, right? It just creates this tension and anxiety in the listener, and you can apply that to life if you want, right? And like Cal said, it doesn't take much to bring it all back together into true harmony. So another metaphor for life, I suppose. They're so easy.
I'd like to go back to last week and our discussion on covenant and the mention of magic. And I think one of the things that was said was our reaction to magic could be, how'd you do that? Or, wow. And I think that in terms of creator and creation, it's, how'd you do that? Or, wow. And so I really appreciate the interdependence of all of our presentations. Thank you.
Should we wrap it up?
Those closing words again?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Try not to cry
I wasn't going to say.
That's great. I heard speaking noises again. So again, this is the preacher Casey and John Steinbeck's book, Grapes of Wrath. Struggling. Nighttime, I'd lay on my back and look up at the stars. Morning, I'd sit and watch the sun come up. Midday, I'd look out from a hill at the rolling dry country. Evening, I'd follow the sun down. Sometimes I'd pray like I'd always done. Only I couldn't figure out what I was praying to or for. There was the hills, and there was me, and we wasn't separate no more. We was one thing, and that one thing was holy. It's pretty much a classic, right?
Great.
We will, at this point, do a symbolic extinguishing of the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Bill. Does everybody want to wave bye-bye to those at home? Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Nice touch there.
Okay, great. We'll see y'all later.
That was truly wonderful. If you would be